Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has cited Pearl Harbor and the terror attacks of September 11 as he appealed to the US Congress to do more to help Ukraine's fight against Russia. Key points: Mr. Zelensky called on the US Congress for further military assistance and for more sanctions against Russia. Mr. Zelensky called on the US Congress for further military assistance and for more sanctions against Russia. Mr. Zelensky began in Ukrainian through an interpreter, but then switched to English for a heartfelt appeal. Mr. Zelensky began in Ukrainian through an interpreter, but then switched to English for a heartfelt appeal. US President Joe Biden is expected to announce an additional $1.1 billion in security assistance to Ukraine. Live streamed into the Capitol complex, Mr. Zelensky said the US must sanction Russian politicians and block imports. And he showed a packed auditorium and emotional video of the destruction and devastation his country has suffered in the war. "We need you right now," Mr. Zelensky said, adding, "I call on you to do more." In urging a steeper economic hit to the Russians, he said, "Peace is more important than income." US representatives gave him a standing ovation before and after his short remarks, which Mr. Zelensky began in Ukrainian through an interpreter, but then switched to English in a heartfelt appeal to help end the bloodshed. "I see no sense in life if it cannot stop the S," he told them. Mr. Zelensky's address was accompanied by an emotional video showing the destruction and devastation his country has suffered in the war. Nearing the 3-week mark in an ever-escalating war, Mr. Zelensky is using the world's leading legislative bodies as a stage to implore allied leaders to stop the Russian airstrikes that are devastating his country. It has also put Mr. Zelensky at odds with President Joe Biden, whose administration has stopped short of providing a no-fly zone or the transfer of military jets from neighboring Poland, as the US seeks to avoid a direct confrontation with Russia. Instead, Mr. Biden is expected to announce an additional $1.1 billion in security assistance to Ukraine, according to a White House official. That would bring the total announced in the last week alone to $1.37 billion. "I wish you to be the leader of the world," Zelensky implores Biden. Russian airstrikes continue to ard residential areas in Ukraine, despite Kremlin promises of not targeting civilians. Appearing in his now trademark army green t-shirt, as he appeals to world leaders, Mr. Zelensky has emerged as a heroic figure at the center of what many view as the biggest security threat to Europe since World War II. Mr. Zelensky thanked the American people, saying Ukraine is grateful for the outpouring of support, and Mr. Biden in particular, even as he urged Mr. Biden to use his office to do more. "You are the leader of the nation. I wish you be the leader of the world," he said. Being the leader of the world means being the leader of peace. Invoking Shakespeare's hero Hamlet last week, Mr. Zelensky asked the British House of Commons whether Ukraine is to be or not to be. On Tuesday, he appealed to "Dear Justin" as he addressed the Canadian Parliament and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urged the UK Parliament to increase sanctions on Russia in a speech to the House of Commons earlier this month. Mr. Zelensky called on European Union leaders at the start of the war to do the politically unthinkable and fast-track Ukraine's membership, and he has continued to push for more help to save his young democracy than world leaders have so far pledged to do. Mr. Biden has insisted there will be no US troops on the ground in Ukraine, and has resisted Mr. Zelensky's relentless pleas for warplanes as too risky, potentially escalating into a direct confrontation with nuclear-armed Russia. Council of Europe expels Russia from human rights body. The Russian flag was removed from the Council of Europe building in Strasbourg following the decision by the committee to expel Russia from the human rights body. The Council of Europe has expelled Russia from the continent's foremost human rights body in an unprecedented move over the invasion of Ukraine. The 47-nation organization's Committee of Ministers said in statement, "The Russian Federation ceases to be a member of the Council of Europe as from today, after 26 years of membership." Earlier this week, the group's parliamentary assembly already initiated the process of expulsion and unanimously backed that Russia would be kicked out. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov insisted it would have left the body regardless. In an interview with Russian broadcaster RBK, he accused NATO and EU countries of abusing their majority in the Council, eventually transforming it into a tool for anti-Russian policy. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba immediately welcomed the decision, tweeting that there was no place for Russia in European borders, as it wages a barbaric war of aggression against Ukraine and commits multiple war crimes. Ukraine is also a member of the Council of Europe. It was unclear what the extent of support was for the expulsion, as the committee arrived at a consensus behind closed doors and did not reveal the breakdown of votes. Loading. AP